What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Great Domain podcast, where we have deep conversations about the gray areas on our creative journey. The main focus is to highlight the obstacles and the emotions that we tend to overlook on our quest to freedom. My name is Justin P. Etienne, and I am the founder and the host for the Great Domain podcast. And today, for the second episode ever, we have a groundbreaking guest. He has the most versatile skill set that I've ever seen in fashion. He is a nomad that took the leap of faith to step into deep waters, and he's the creative director of his own fashion brand. He exhibits luxury quality across any creative medium that he touches. He has worked with some of your favorite fashion brands such as Elena Velez, Who Decides War, and so much more. And his role in the industry is what keeps the fashion industry thriving. Aside from all of these skill sets, he is an amazing friend, an authentic person, and has taught me so much about the craft of fashion design. I welcome to you, Marcel Consiglio. It's a pleasure to have you today.
That was a beautiful intro. Thank you, bro.
Of course, yo. I'm so excited right now because I remember a couple years ago when we was in the sewing labs, like around 2019, we were manifesting everything that we have right now and more. So how does it make you feel, bro? Like that you're here right now with all of your whole setup and all of your.
It's a blessing, honestly. Like I never really thought in a million years that I'd be doing this right now because I started off basically, um, you know, not in this industry. I first started off going to school for accounting, and then I realized that it wasn't for me, and I was like, I need to do something that I'm passionate about. Otherwise, I'm just never gonna be happy with my life. So I had to take that leap of faith and that jump into doing something creative, and I never really thought that I could do it as a profession. But
That's beautiful.
yeah.
So what allowed you to step into fashion from accounting? Because a lot of kids don't really know that these things are possible.
No, for sure, especially because I was living in Cape Cod, Massachusetts at the time. So it's a super small town in on Cape Cod, which the average age I believe was like 65. So fashion was not a thing at all.
Wow.
But at the time I was living at home and I was working full time, so I was like making like a decent amount of money for the time, and I had some money, and I just started buying designer pieces, and then from those pieces that I started buying, I started to develop a style, and then I just kind of thought, oh, I have ideas too. Why can't I start creating garments? But that was a whole different ball game that I don't know if I really knew I was ready to grasp, but I was just like, all right, let me just try. So then I would go to work, and then I would come home, and I had a home sewing machine, and I used to take apart garments and then like try to sew them back together. And I remember I couldn't even sew in a straight line. I'd get so frustrated. And I remember the first time I sewed a sleeve, I sewed it shut.
Damn.
Like I didn't even realize that. I didn't understand even how to sew things right sides together, or even understand any concepts about how to create a clean seam or anything. But I just kept trying and just kept trying, and honestly, it wasn't even until I got to FIT where I really made any real progress.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a lot of the mistakes that you were making allowed you to grow so much as a designer. The repetition of constantly seeing what I'm doing wrong allowed you to gain more confidence.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the more mistakes you make is the more you learn. You learn from all your mistakes, but it's just also about all the hours that you put in. And I feel like especially when we met at FIT, that's when I was putting in the most hours because I felt also behind with my life because I was like, oh, I'm going through a career change. I was 20, 23, 24 at the time.
Oh, so this was like after you had went. Did you go to college prior to?
Yeah, exactly. So I went to college prior to FIT, got a bachelor's degree in accounting, started working in that industry for about a year. And then when I was 22 in 2016, that's when I decided to quit my job, put everything into my car, and moved to New York City.
And that's why it's so beautiful, right? Because a lot of adults think that after a certain age, it's too late to jump into a certain field.
Right.
Especially like in my community, like certain people say by 21, you need to figure out what you need to do and stick to that.
Right.
But I feel like it's essential to experiment and constantly find yourself. There's no specific age where you have to be able to say, you know what, when I'm 30, I have to just do this exactly. When I was at FIT, there were people who were in like 45, 50, exploring new avenues and stepping into like production management.
Yeah.
And they were like, you know what, I have kids at home, all of these responsibilities are 9 to 5, but I have a passion that I want to pursue. and we all deserve to explore that. So I think it's really cool that you got to, step into accounting and say, you know what, this is not really for me.
Yeah.
I need to do something that that
Exactly.
fit my persona.
For sure, 100%. There was definitely a lot of people in my class too that, were older and they, whether they're going through career change or not, but they were interested in learning. I know I definitely personally felt like I was behind, so that's why I spent so many hours in the lab because I was like, oh man, like I felt like I was behind, so I was like, I got to put in extra time to catch up with the kids that were like 17 or 18 or whatever, however old they were.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you were in the classroom, I remember the first time we met. I think we were introduced because we were working on your first brand that you were doing with Jared, and we were just like constantly running into each other when you had like all your fabrics and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was even before I knew anything, but that was such a great experience because that really taught me so much about production and the whole process overall. And then I started to really learn more about fashion and the process itself when I took a pattern making class in the summer of 2017. And that's what opened my mind up to like, oh shit, I really don't know anything.
Wow.
And then I was like, that's when I became ultra obsessed with pattern making and just, creating garments from scratch.
So what was the program that you applied to for FIT initially?
So I did about a year and a half as a non-degree student. So I was just taking courses at night, not part of any program, just learning. Yeah, just because I just wanted to learn, honestly. I wasn't so into, being a part of the program or anything. I was just taking tailoring classes, pattern making classes, accessory design classes, jewelry classes. And then after that year to year and a half, I decided to apply to accessories design because I felt like I had a grasp on making clothes, but I really wanted to learn how to make shoes because I felt like that knowledge was so closed off in the industry. And
why is that?
I'm not too sure. I just feel like it's such a niche craft, and there's a lot of machinery that goes into it that it's not so accessible as clothing is,
especially in New York City.
Exactly. So I wanted to learn more about that. So I decided to apply to the 1-year accessory design program. Since I already had a degree, I could just bypass all the other classes and just take all the design courses that I need to. Yeah.
So it seems like a lot of things worked out for you by testing the waters first. You didn't feel the need to just jump into mentor a fashion design program, and then find out, damn, I'm paying all this money and I don't really like it.
Yeah.
But I can go in and take 1-2 classes, then I can figure out what I don't like, what I do like.
Yeah.
And on the creative journey, it's really important for everybody to realize that it's okay to test different things out. Like, you don't have to just stick to one medium.
Right.
So the fact that you were introduced to that is really cool, bro.
Yeah.
I really respect you for being patient with yourself as well.
Right.
Because you got to then see that, all right, now I go into accessories and I can take these skills and then apply it to something else now.
Exactly. And that's exactly, what my mindset was. So then by the end of that, I was able to create a total look collection, and then that's what I did at the end of my program. I was creating garments, shoes, bags, clothes, gloves.
I remember those boots that you did.
Yeah.
The first boots that you did, I was like, I've never seen somebody create boots from scratch in my life. And somebody that was like very close to my age was doing that. So it opened up a whole bunch of possibilities in my mind that, there's way more out here than we think.
Right. It's true. Yeah, I definitely miss making shoes for sure. I haven't done that in a while, but it's one of my favorite things. Honestly, those boots that I made is one of the things that got me the opportunity in Italy. So how did you feel about your journey at FIT? What did you feel like, was most impactful for you? I remember when I first met you, we were in the menswear labs. I remember you were working on the puffer vests.
Facts.
Yeah.
Around that time, well, like when I started out my journey, similar to you, I was in high school playing basketball. I was just focused on ball. So I just wanted to go to like, a D2, D3 school and then like potentially play overseas. The goal is always to like go play basketball in the NBA.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's a lot that goes into that. But for me, I was just pretty much focused on like athletics, and I grew up in Brooklyn. So I was just introduced to basketball as a thing to be an outlet for me and to also just kind of like stay out of trouble. And then after a while, I started just being able to build genuine connections and stay healthy and fit. So that was just always like my outlet for things.
Yeah, that's amazing to always have an outlet like that.
Yeah,
that's different from your creative passion. So I feel like that's so important to always have a second outlet.
Right.
That's more of like a hobby that doesn't have so much pressure.
Right. And that's the thing too, because I feel like where I came from, it kind of was pressure to like upkeep this level of excellence with basketball, because you would kind of be considered as like a scrub if you was playing on a team with people and you was messing up the flow of the game. You know what I'm saying? So just this mentality of growing up in New York City just taught me that I have to like strive for excellence and do well in every area.
Right.
And then from there, I went to high school. I was introduced to a fashion drawing class. My fashion teacher saw a lot of potential in me. And honestly, she used to yell and curse at me every day, bro, because I did not care about anything outside of basketball. But for the first time, I felt like somebody really cared about me. Applied to FIT for production management, which is business. And then I got it on the first try, and then the rest was history.
You know, that's where we met at FIT.
That's where we met, bro.
Good days. I love it, man. I love it.
When I stepped into the school, it was the first time that I felt like I was in a place where I belonged, because I didn't know there was a whole universe of creatives like myself. I was always creative as a kid.
Yeah.
I just didn't think that it was possible to turn it into a career like yourself.
Yeah. No, for sure. I felt the same way, honestly. Like being at FIT was so inspiring. I had never been in a whole room with like sewing machines,
right?
You know, or in a whole room where there's like jewelry benches and you can make rings and pendants and like work with metal and stuff. So like it opened up my mind to a whole different world that I wasn't even sure was even existed.
Right.
Honestly. And I think that's why FIT is so beautiful, because it teaches you so much about the actual craft itself, rather than some other design schools might focus more on conceptual design, rather than FIT is really kind of more like a trade school in the sense of it focuses more on the actual craft.
Right.
And that's what I respected and loved so much about it.
And that's really good that you touched on that, because I wanted to ask you, a lot of people always ask me in the DMs, like, is it important to go to fashion school, or can I just become a fashion designer without it? Would you say that your career would have played out the way that it is right now if you didn't go to FIT, or do you think that going to fashion school is really crucial?
I mean, for me personally, I feel like it was crucial. I don't think it's crucial for everybody, but for me personally, I do, especially for what I do. It's just so difficult and takes so much more time to do it on your own. Like I feel like taking courses and kind of like learning the basic structures of like patterning a garment and the basic rules of balance and different things were so important that it's so difficult to learn that on your own. Of course, you can read a book, but then it's a lot more hours of trial and error that I feel like I avoided by going to fashion school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was some of your favorite classes that you ever taken at school?
I mean, definitely footwear design, jewelry design. I would say those are probably my two top, and tailoring. Tailoring for sure, yeah.
So talk about tailoring. What is something that you took with you for the rest of your career in your tailoring class that you feel like the audience would need to hear more about to expand in their creativity and fashion?
I think that was like really the backbone for me. Like tailoring was like the backbone of like creating a high-end garment, learning how to sew a blazer jacket with all the canvassing and the pad stitching and all the little bells and whistles that goes into it. I feel like taking those techniques and then applying them to any other garment, and it changes everything. So I think for sure it was the backbone of just my overall knowledge in sewing was definitely coming from those tailoring courses. I took a tailoring course in trousers and then a blazer jacket. And then from there, I would just create my own projects for myself. So I would be like, okay, I just learned how to make this tailored trouser. Now let me make my own design, but apply what I learned on my own design. And then I would just like keep doing that over and over and over again.
On
my own time, to just keep practicing my skill set. What would you say your favorite class was, or your most important learning experience was at FIT?
See, what I like about what you said, first to answer your question, before I answer your question, is like a lot of people in college get assignments and they just do the assignment that they're told by their professor. But I realized that the people who thrive out of FIT, the design majors, were the ones who took their projects and they kept practicing and practicing and practicing without any expectation of an end result, right?
Right.
Because you weren't thinking like, yo, I'm about to make these pants or a blazer so that I could sell it to like to Macy's or Bergdorf Goodman.
Not at all.
You were just like, yo, I want to keep figuring out how to become better.
Right.
So that's really powerful to me, and I actually adopted that from you, Shan.
Really?
Like when I used to be in the labs, like when I seen, like all of these menswear kids and like my fashion design friends, like they used to just show me so many different things. But for me in production management, we never actually had any design classes, so I never learned how to sew like yourself from a class.
Right.
We learned more so the business aspect, which is like sourcing, manufacturing, product development,
which is also important though.
Very
all goes
important.
hand in hand,
Literally.
And
it was cool because I felt like I needed to understand the business aspect of fashion because I've always felt like I could develop the skill set on my own, which is what I did. But my favorite class was pretty much, I think, supply chain management because it was the overall life cycle of what fashion was. So it's like, all right, you have a brand, and we start off with a sketch in the fashion design department. And then being in production, I was able to get internships in product development. So I had like interns for 3.1 Philip Lim, my second year of school.
Wow. How was that?
Bro, I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. Especially because like my grandmother had passed away during that time. That's cool, bro. But when you're just on this journey to finding yourself, when you're I was 19 at the time.
Right.
It's just hard to balance mental health and fashion simultaneously with your friends and everything. So it just always felt like I had this like heavy weight on my shoulders.
Yeah.
While trying to be this creative that I wanted to be.
Right.
But at Philip Lim, I learned so much about what quality was. Never settling for one thing. So if there was a sketch that was handed off from fashion design to product development, we need to figure out like what type of trims do we need and how can we save money on this zipper? How can we cut the cost on this button? And then they sent me out to all of the garment district stores and places. So that's when I found Pacific Trimming, where they had like zipper notions and like um, fabric paint. And then there was times where I had to go to factories, so that's when I started getting introduced to like, all right, there's places where I can get clothes made.
Right.
But if I never interned at a high end company like that, I would have never probably stepped foot into these places. So once I started having conversations with people in the factories, they were looking at me like I was just a young kid, but they saw that I was eager.
Right.
And being in fashion, it's really important to show people how serious you are. So I just showed up. Never called out in my internship, no matter how sad I was feeling. There was times where I even cried in the bathroom, bro, because I was just so sad and down. I used to call my mom, I used to call my bro Jenny back home and tell him that it was really heavy on me. But just pushing through and knowing that there's always light at the end of the tunnel kept me going. And after I finished the internship, bro, they had actually offered me to stay longer at Philip Lim that summer. But at the time, it was just for credit, and I wasn't getting paid, so I just wanted to get a job. That's when I stepped into retail. So I pivoted from FIT after my associates, went into retail at Urban Outfitters. And then after that summer, that's when I went into my bachelor's again. And then I expanded from there. So it's just being in this space where, fashion is just not about making clothes necessarily, right? Because you went there for accessory design. I'm sure when you were at home, you didn't even know it was accessory design and jewelry and shoes and all that. But you had this interest where you felt compelled to get up and change your life. And that's why I want to remind everybody who's watching right now to recognize that there is a change within you that needs to be made, and that's okay.
Right.
And then when you keep exploring and finding out new information, you're going to keep finding yourself, and the ground's always going to meet you.
Exactly. If you take the leap, the net will appear. That's a saying that I always tell myself. So, and I feel like it's been true for me in my journey for sure. That every time I've taken that leap into the darkness, there's always that net to catch me, whether it's another opportunity or whatever the case is.
Right.
There's always something around the corner.
I love that. What would you say was like some of the hardest challenges that you faced being in fashion when you started out in the beginning? Because I know there's so much different things going on, especially within the culture.
Yeah,
it's a competition sure. And
no, definitely. I mean, I feel like I wasn't really paying too much attention to like other students and like what they were doing, or really too into like the whole competition, or like, oh, what are they doing, what are they working on, or I wasn't paying attention to any of that. Honestly, it was just a more about of like me versus me, like I need to be better for myself, like I want to learn this shit, because I felt like it didn't come easy to me at all. Like I felt like it was really a tough learning curve. Like I just didn't understand a lot. and it took more. I had to practice more to to learn how to sew better or make a pattern better, or like I at the time, I especially at the beginning of my FIT days, when I was making patterns, I wouldn't understand, like, okay, if I move this seam, what is that gonna do? So I didn't understand that. So it was like very kind of like throwing darts blind a lot.
And what would you tell yourself in those moments where you felt so down, where you felt like you weren't good enough? What were the conversations that you were having internally during those moments?
I feel like it wasn't really so much of me feeling down or not really or doubting myself. I think it was just more of like I felt like I needed to understand it and to like grow and to just like do it. I think I was just more at the time. There was just this huge fire in me and just like I need to learn, I need to do this, like I'm behind, like I need to like get better, I want to make these types of garments. I just remember there was days in the garment, I would go to the garment district, I would walk around, and I would go to these fabric stores, and I didn't know how to sew anything, and I would see like the most beautiful fabrics that I wanted to buy, but wouldn't buy them because I didn't know how to make anything like by myself, like
You
without
didn't want to
having
waste your
to.
money.
Exactly, and I didn't want to waste my money at the time. So I remember like there was one day I was leaving the garment district, and I was like, if there's one thing I want to achieve in my life, it's just like I just want to be able to make anything that I want that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of surreal now that I'm at that point, but I guess it's always like once you reach one mountain peak, you're looking at the next one. Sometimes it's important to like take a step back and realize how far you've come. And I know that you definitely have had moments for that for yourself too.
Facts.
What do you feel like is a moment for you where you've achieved something and then been like that you wanted so badly, and then you're like, oh, okay, now that I have it, you're on to the next thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Around that time, when I was in senior year at FIT for my bachelor's program, I was actually trying to figure my life out. I didn't really know I wanted to be a designer so much. So I was just exploring different avenues. And at the time, I was actually modeling for a lot of different brands. So I had got like my first couple of gigs with like modeling for Hood by Air. I had modeled for Yeezy Season 3. And I modeled for like Air Jordan, which was the biggest gig I ever got, and modeling for
Wow.
Converse. Yeah.
I remember that.
And my bro Alan Michael Duval, he had casted me and his friends to model for the Global Converse campaign 2017. And in 2018, I had went to Air Jordan gig, got that, and that was global as well. And I ended up modeling for them twice.
Wow.
But when I modeled for them the first time, I was actually like on set for 2 days while I was doing my senior thesis for my project for FIT.
Wow.
And I only slept for like 2 hours in like 2 days. So I was up, like I barely ate, just snacking on sandwiches and like snacks and stuff. And it was not healthy. It was not a good lifestyle, but I had to just make it work to graduate. And then from there, it just showed me this environment of like being in tune with like higher frequencies. When I was like modeling and I was on set with the people from Air Jordan, it just made me feel like I belonged there, and I wanted to keep elevating my career from that. And then after I graduated from school, um, I was just kind of lost in the summer. I had like post grad depression because people around just telling you need to figure out your career. You need to know exactly what you need to do so you can start making 9 to 5 money.
Right.
But I didn't want to go into 9 to 5, bro. I
Yeah.
never really like jumped into 9 to 5 heavy from that time, and I always felt down because of it. But I started recognizing so much potential and opportunities from just going my own way. I believed in myself, and I always stuck to that. And then by the time the summertime came, bro, we were in the labs, and I was working in the mental health field temporarily in 2019, and I was working with autistic adults in a day program. And I remember I used to call you and tell you like, "Yo, bro, I'm feeling kind of down. Like, I just want to figure out how to get started with design." And Belina at the time was helping me too, but you was like, "Yo, pull up to the labs in the city, and I'll
Yeah.
I'll teach you like
Yeah.
anything."
Yeah. We were there every day in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
We would just get the rooms unlocked, and we would just be in there. I remember you, Shan, and I were just in there every single day in the summer. That was the summer you made your collection
Yeah,
to then preview in September
yeah,
of
fall
2019, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
fall
exactly.
winter 2019.
Yeah.
And then the thing was, for me, was like, right now I just want to express my gratitude to you, bro, because a lot of people in fashion, I had asked a lot of people when I was in FIT to help me learn how to sew certain things, and they just gave me the cold shoulder because
Yeah.
they didn't want me to be better than them and take something away from them. But
Right.
fashion, when you help somebody, it doesn't take anything away from what you got going on. And like you and Shan and Belina, Um, like in Nas, I remember especially too, like at that time, you literally sat down with me, bro, and you showed me, yo, this is how you do the zipper fly. This is how you do a side pocket. I remember for the first pants I made, you showed me how to do the zipper fly like 8 or 9 times, and you were patient with me. And I remember I got so angry because I was like, I don't want to take time away from what you got going on because I feel like I'm not equipped enough to know what you're doing. But you were like, nah, bro, this somebody had to sit down and teach me a skill and I learned how to do it. And me sitting down teaching you this thing is gonna help me be better.
Right.
Because it's just repetition and practice for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then from then, bro, when I built my first pair of pants, I remember the black ones. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Bro, I felt so hyped that I put them on. And from then, once I started seeing you and Shan make your garments, I was like, yo, I want to keep making one garment a week. So every week during that summer, we
New
promised each
garment.
other,
Yeah.
new garment, new garment, new garment. And
Yeah.
then the repetition of that just started getting me into this concept of like, pants is really my thing.
Right. No, I remember that. I think that for me, it was so important to give back because I felt that my learning curve, I knew how tough it was for me to learn. So I didn't want other people to have to go through the same thing that I was going through. And I also felt that when I was looking for help, it was very difficult to find. There were certain people that, God bless them, that helped me and taught me the things that I know now, but I just wanted to give back. So I felt like I always saw you in the labs and we were always there together, always working countless hours. And there was people in the programs that wouldn't even put in that much time. But I always saw you there putting in that time. So I knew that, you had the passion and the drive to do it. You just didn't have the knowledge at the time. But I wanted to help you as much as I could because I saw that you really wanted it, just like I really wanted it. We both had that in common.
Bro, I really appreciate you, bro, for real, man. Because from that point, I was able to start developing my own patterns from the things that you were teaching me. And I, like yourself, I just kept practicing on my own time. And that's how I really started developing my skill set of making pants. And people started knowing me for making pants. And that's why people always ask, like, yo, why do you only do that? It's because at that time, that's all I was focused on.
I remember like one of the big catalyst moments too was I had pulled up to the lab and you were in there and I was taking my tailoring course at the time and they gave me this paper on how to draft pants from scratch from like your measurements and I had photocopied that and given it to you, but a lot of students wouldn't do that for other students, but I remember that I did that, and from that moment, you just started drafting so many pants and doing so many pants.
Bro, do you know how many times I redrafted that pants pattern that you gave me, bro?
You
Guess.
probably know from scratch now off the top of your head.
Yeah, you could just be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
bro, literally, I remember the first couple of times I did it. I think I drafted a pair of pants 9 times before I actually said yeah.
Wow.
And not like it took like 7 hours to like draft it
Oh yeah.
because it'd be like, all right, I remember it was like point A to B.
Yeah.
This is like your hip measurement, so it would be like point A to B, and then C to D, and then E to F would be this, this, and this, and
Yeah.
you take your waist measurement and then divide that by 4,
Yeah.
distribute that to the waist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People think fashion is just like
It's confusing too.
it's so confusing,
Yeah.
but like I'm good with numbers, thank God. But when you gave me that paper, it changed my life, bro.
Yeah. No, for real, man.
Like I said, bro, I appreciate you, and I was able to develop my first fashion show from that, and that's what changed my life. And I started expanding my brand because my friends was taking the time out to teach me small things that added up.
Yeah.
And in fashion, I just want to remind all of y'all that you don't have to feel like you gotta gatekeep information in terms of like passing on knowledge because it's not gonna hold you back. Like Marcel could have just said, you know what, I don't want to share this with him because I don't want him to thrive. The fact that he took the time out to teach me this helped me grow and it helped him grow. And now he's doing pattern making for big companies. He's thriving with his own brand. He has all of these machines because he worked for that. And I didn't take anything away from that. So always remember that it's okay to help somebody. And it's a doggy dog industry, but trust me, there's enough room for everybody to eat at the table.
It is. It's very cutthroat for sure. Very cutthroat.
For real, bro. For you though, I just wanted to touch on your experience at the end of college because I remember like we was talking about how you had some obstacles at that time.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you at the end of graduation, at the end of your degree?
Yeah, I was facing a lot of obstacles because I'm definitely someone that likes to work with their hands. So I focused more on pattern making and sewing the whole time I was at FIT. I wasn't so big into designing because in my mind I was thinking, okay, if I can come up with the pattern already, why do I need to sketch it? If I have the idea in my head, I don't necessarily need to sketch it. I'll just make the pattern. I'll sew it up. I'll make a mock up, or I'll do what I need to do to realize it in physical reality, and then I can make changes from there. So I started butting heads a lot with my design professor because he would want me to go do a certain route. He would want me to do certain things, and it was just honestly against what I wanted to do. And already having been in the real world and working and already have a college degree and everything, I didn't really care to kiss his ass or anything. So then we started to fall out. And it got to the point too where I had skipped, I think at FIT you can skip up to 3 classes before you fail.
I remember that.
And I had skipped 2 classes. And my design class was an all-day class. It was 5 hours long because it was the 1 year program. Yeah,
5 hours in a class.
Crazy.
Straight.
Yeah, straight.
Probably no break.
We had like a small break, but
10 minutes, right?
Yeah, like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, 5 hour class. And I remember it was supposed to be the 3rd class. And I was gonna skip it because I was working on a pair of boots actually that I really wanted to finish. And I had showed up to the class about an hour late because I was in the garment district. I had them change the zipper pulls. I had done some like zipper pulls in sterling silver. I wanted them to change it for me because I didn't have the tools at the time. And then just happened to that day, an alumni that had graduated from my program just happened to come into the classroom with a friend of his that owned a factory in Italy. And at the time too, this was 1 month before graduating. I was a little unsure of, what the future would hold or what I would do. But all I knew is that I needed to work either doing pattern making or with my hands or doing something because that's what I was interested in. And I knew that would take my skills to the next level to be able to continue on my own brand. So I remember, they were in the room and I got showed up late and they were already in the room. And as soon as I got in the room, I didn't know who he was, but he had an aura around him that I knew he was somebody. And then he started talking about how he owns a factory in Italy and how he works with some big brands. And he said that he cares more about people that pattern make and sew rather than design. And as soon as he said that, I was like, I have to talk to him. But I knew that approaching him in the classroom in front of all the other students would have been the wrong thing to do because then it puts him in a situation where if he gives me something or an opportunity or anything, then he kind of has to give it to everybody. So maybe this was rude, but at the time I decided to just take a step outside the classroom with the boots that I had just finished. I'd showed up late. He was giving a speech to the class. I decided to take a step out. And I just remember sitting outside the classroom for about 45 minutes waiting for him to come out so I could introduce myself and kind of explain to him what I wanted to do and that I would, obviously want to go to Italy and learn more about the craft. So I remember just sitting outside the classroom with the most anxiety I've ever had, heart pounding, beating out of my chest, and just knowing that I had to talk to him and had to take this risk. And then as soon as he came out, I got up, I shook his hand, introduced myself to him, showed him the boots that I had just finished. I just had them like in my hands and I just like showed it to him. And I just remember him just being like, "Oh, you made these boots?" And I was like, "Yeah, I made them." And then I was also holding my phone and he's like, "Wow, this is incredible." And he took my phone out of my hands and he just put his phone number in it.
Wow.
And he just said, "Contact me, let's be in touch." And that was all that happened in that conversation. And then after that, his friend, which was the alumni, ran back into the classroom and was like, "Oh, he deserves an A, he deserves an A."
To your professor?
To my professor, who I had beef with. And he was like, "Oh, he deserves an A, he deserves an A."
So you were beefing with your professor.
Yeah.
And this alumni ran back into class to remind your professor of how great you are.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that pissed him off even more.
Yeah. And it was bad. It got really bad, yeah.
And how did you feel like, no, bro, for real though, like, number one, you had the self-awareness to know that if I sit in the class and I say
Yeah.
something to this guy in front of all the students, it's gonna make me look a certain way, and it might not work in my favor.
Right.
Then you have the self-awareness to know that I gotta be patient and bet on myself
Yeah.
to sit outside and wait to like express my, excitement for meeting, like to showing me what I do. And then you already put in the work to like develop the craft of making shoes and pattern making, and then it just met up with you at the perfect time.
Yeah,
Like,
it was definitely divine timing for sure.
damn.
Yeah. So after that, my professor was definitely feeling some type of way because he wanted the number and he wanted to like kind of share that contact with the students, but obviously it wasn't in my place to give someone else's phone number out to anybody else. And it basically, yeah, to make a long story short, he still has me blocked on Instagram to this
So he
day.
blocked on Instagram.
Yeah.
And what was the main reason you said? You said just because.
Well, just because I wasn't really, I didn't care for design. You know, I didn't really care to do his sketches and design
the way he
wanted me to design. So I did it in my way, and it didn't work for him. So in the end, I think I ended up getting like a C in that class, but all my other classes I had, flying colors. So, I mean, not that the grade matters, but it was the worst grade I ever got at FIT because everything else I was just performing. And because he felt like I wasn't performing to his standards, then we had beef.
You the man, bro.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
Damn.
Yeah. So from there, I was actually taking a trip out to Italy. Had another opportunity to shoot the collection that I had just finished, completely separate to this whole story. And because I was in Italy, I had texted him and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be in Italy. Would love to come to the factory and meet you again." And then he replied and he was like, "Definitely come." Sent me the address, sent me all the details. And then I remember I pulled up with a suitcase of like 20 pieces that I had made.
He was prepared.
I was prepared. So I put all the pieces on the table, shoes, bags, skirts, jackets, coats, everything, and basically just told him that I want to come to Italy and work and learn and really immerse myself in the craft and take my skill set to the next level. And he was open to it, and he gave me an opportunity.
And you worked in a factory in Italy.
Yeah.
Wow. Bro,
that was definitely life changing for sure.
Life changing,
yeah.
bro.
For sure.
You had a lot of faith in yourself. I remember at the time too, you were so sure of what you wanted. Even though you said like, I don't really know exactly how things are gonna turn out, but you knew that with the skills that you developed and the work that you put in school, you wanted to amplify that. And it was so crazy for me because like I said, we were in the labs every day and you were talking about like, yo, I need to just do something. Like it's not like this is not enough where I'm at right now. I need to do more.
Right.
And then I remember you told me like, yo, we're leaving to go to Italy.
Yeah.
And you did, bro.
It was a big moment for sure, yeah.
And it's so powerful to me that you believed in yourself that much. And when it comes to fashion and any form of creativity, it's not just about you just doing the work. There's so much spirituality and like so much investing into yourself and your mind that you have to do to get to the next level.
Definitely.
And you spend a lot of time. It seems like you spend a lot of time, pouring into yourself, pouring into your mind, pouring into your spirit to say, you know what? Every time I step into this room, I'm going to show up as the best version of myself, and I'm going to be confident in anybody that I come across or anybody's hand that I shake. I'm going to let them know that I'm serious about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And you got the job, bro.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, it was definitely a big moment. And when I got to Italy is when I realized that I didn't know shit. As much as I thought I knew so much, that I had made all these things and I knew all these things, I realized that there was still, the ocean was so much deeper. The ocean was so much deeper. And that's when I learned digital pattern making and so much about the, production, product development, and the whole supply chain. Working at a vertical factory that basically we go straight from initial design all the way through production.
What would you say was some of the hardest obstacles that you faced while you were there?
Italy was a whole learning curve in itself. And I feel that, first of all, the biggest obstacle was the language, 100%. I was in a small town where a lot of people didn't speak English. There were very few people, a town called Vicenza, right outside of Venice. And there was very few people there that spoke English. and especially at the factory, I believe there was only 2 or 3 English speakers there.
Wow.
God bless them, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have understood anything. But that was definitely a huge learning curve to learn the language. And second of all was also my visa and my legal status.
Thanks.
And then third of all was learning pattern making on the computer digitally rather than at FIT. I was doing everything by hand.
Right.
So it took about, I mean, learning Italian was step by step. So it didn't
It's an ongoing process.
exactly. It's always an ongoing process. I mean, even now I speak Italian well. Of course, there's still always more things to learn and to know. There's, I'm not an expert. I speak Italian well, but I'm not super fluent.
Of course.
And as far as the legal situation went, I tried to get a work visa. I wasn't able to for reasons that the factory was actually owned by someone that lived outside of Italy. So it was like a weird complication where they weren't allowing me an Italian visa because the owner was actually a Swiss resident. I don't know. It's like a weird thing. And then I tried to get like a student visa, which also would allow me to work, but then I had gotten denied because they wanted me to already know Italian before I went to Italy, which is kind of strange.
Did you have to take a test to let them know that you did know the language? Or?
No, but I was at the Italian consulate and they started speaking to me in Italian, and I couldn't keep up with what they were saying. But this was early when I first moved there. It was in the first 3 months, and then after that, Shan actually found an article online that talked about how you can apply for Italian citizenship while living in Italy if you're from Italian descent. And my father was born in Italy, so that was the route that we ended up taking. And it took about a year and a half, but it was honestly the best thing that I ever did, was to go through that process and to become a citizen. And now I have, passport and legal tender that I can also go back at any time.
That's fire, bro.
Yeah. So it was definitely a huge obstacles that created a lot of anxiety, especially for, a year and a half, almost 2 years, where I was unsure if I was going to be able to stay, but I just decided to push through and see it through to the end.
You were confident that it was going to work out in the end? Or did you feel like I might have to go back to New York?
No, there was definitely a lot of times where I was so unsure of what was going to happen, but I'm so happy that it worked out.
No, I'm happy for you, bro.
Thank you. Yeah. So what would you say were some obstacles that you faced in your brand in developing in the past 2 years?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like navigating real life experiences with running a brand. Like, people think fashion is just like, yo, I'm gonna devote my whole entire life to just making clothes every single day and that's it. Like, we have like family problems, we have mental health. The pandemic happened, so I had to figure out ways to like keep myself sane and like connect with my friends and like figure out how to, make enough money to be able to pay for things. Because let's keep it above. Like, when it comes to going to the garment industry, bro, if we go tomorrow, bro, we're probably gonna cash out like $300 just to get some nice fabric that we really want to make something out of. So I had to figure out a way to like balance out my time. So I was like, all right, I gotta work, enough hours at a job, primarily when I was working in the mental health field, to sustain money, to then invest in like bills, and then like for my own stuff, like food, transportation. I had a car at the time and all of that, and then still navigating through the concept of like stepping into my adulthood. But like the biggest challenge after a while was just figuring out like how to allocate my money properly. Because where I come from, like, I was not really taught how to, distribute my money in a certain way, especially as an entrepreneur.
Right.
Like, I'm pretty much like the first entrepreneur out of like my primary family. So I just had to figure it out like along the way and make mad mistakes. I used to spend like, let's say if I touched like 2,500 for the summer from like selling some clothes or just like working and stuff, I would probably just blow it because I'm like, yo, I want to like go on vacation, or I want to like invest in mad fabric, but not figuring out a system to understand like how am I going to make that money back.
Right.
So after a while, I had to just navigate like and start researching and start reading different books.
Yeah.
And figuring out like, all right, let me start doing pre-orders now. So when I started doing pre-orders, I was like, you know what, I don't have to spend so much upfront money on production. let me cut the cost and just sew the samples myself. So I started sewing on my samples, saving my bread on that. And then moving forward, when people started ordering from the site, I had to figure out like, all right, I don't want to pay the factory to produce the garments now because I'm gonna lose more money. So let me start sewing everything myself. And that's 2020 when I did the neoprene collection.
Yeah.
I was sewing all of my orders. I think I had like 12 to 13, like maybe like 11 to 13 or 14 orders, including bucket hats and pants.
Wow.
And
That's
I sold all of them myself, bro.
That's a lot.
I sacrificed my whole summer in 2020 to just like work on the craft in my room while everybody was out partying. Like I would go to parties and pop out once in a while, but like I had to lock in and sacrifice my time and say, you know what? If I want to make this money and invest it into more clothes and more fabric, then I have to do this. And then after that, I remember we were on FaceTime while you were in Italy, and we was just keeping each other sane. Honestly, like I remember I told you and Shane, we was having like 3 hour combos on the phone.
I feel like every other week almost.
Literally.
Yeah.
But like just the obstacle of just like having self doubt when the world shut down was just like the biggest obstacle. I had to just reposition myself.
For sure.
But I remember you helped me with one of my patterns, well, like a few of my patterns for my collection from the 2021 fall winter.
Yeah.
And I actually like developed my own pant pattern with like the pleats on the cargo pants and like the extended zipper fly. But I wanted to make sure it was good, so I sent you the measurements. I showed you the reference on FaceTime, and then you were able to do it on the program. So
I remember that. Yeah, that was a big moment. Yeah. And the puffer jacket too.
Yeah, the puffer jacket.
Yeah.
And yeah, bro, like from that time, like that was the biggest obstacle. And then I had like started using TikTok to promote my business. And then I started figuring out like people want to hear a story more from a designer. Like it's not just about just showing photo shoots and video shoots. People want to understand the values of the brand owner. They want to understand what the brand owner is feeling. You know what I'm saying? So from there, I just pivoted everything. And that's how I started expanding everything. But those obstacles needed to happen in order for me to figure out like, all right, this is the direction that I want to go into. It's not gonna always be, I know exactly what I'm gonna do all the time.
Definitely. And I feel like that's the same for everybody though, you know? Like it's a constant learning curve. It's a constant repositioning, readjusting, and no one knows really what they're doing. They're just trying something. If it works, great. Move on, keep moving forward with that. And if not, then try something else.
For sure. I wanted to also ask, what was it like working with some of the designers and the brands out of the factory, and what are some of the biggest things that you learned in?
Yeah, so the first designer that I worked with in Italy was actually Ev. Shout out Ev. Ev Bravado, who designs War with Taylor.
Congrats.
And it was for their fall winter 2020 show in Paris.
Wow.
And I believe we did about 10 to 12 pieces for them, mainly outerwear. So puffer jackets, coats, things like that.
And how did y'all connect?
We connected through Instagram, honestly.
Wow.
Well, Ev and I had been following each other on Instagram, and then when I had moved out to Italy, I sent him a message basically offering production in Italy. And then from there, that's when we kind of started the conversation and then brought it, into fruition. And that was a big learning curve for me, and doing the whole process and, going through the whole steps. So that was the first time that I really actually worked on a designer's collection and bringing it into physical garments, and then seeing it going onto the runway in Paris. It was incredible. And then more recently, was for Elena Velez, Spring Summer 24, where she just had her runway show, where it was in a venue in Brooklyn where it was a mud. I don't know if you saw it. It was like a big mud fight. Yeah. So we did, I believe, 5 or 6 looks for her as well. I mean, that was just including like pants, corset, jackets, coats, a lot of different things.
And how long did it take you to do all of that?
From start to finish, I believe we started in July, and then we delivered everything for the show in September. So it's like about 2 months. Yeah. So from initial sketch concept and then delivering the final samples.
And everything came out exactly the way she envisioned?
Exactly. Yeah. So she was happy and excited for that, for sure. Wow. Yeah. Everything looked great.
Congrats.
I was really happy about that.
And I know you said that a lot of the clients that you get is through word of mouth marketing. You don't even really promote the business that much on social media. So how do you think that comes about?
Exactly. I mean, I just think that through my time in the industry and just knowing different people, and also being at FIT and having friends that also work in the industry, it's just kind of like, oh, we know Marcel, he's doing pattern making, let's reach out to him. And then, I work with one client and then they recommend me to someone else, or, I know someone, they'll recommend me to someone, and then it just kind of all snowballs from there.
Right.
And yeah, so far I've been lucky enough to have all my clients through word of mouth.
And honestly, that comes about because you took the leap of faith to develop the skill set of pattern making and doing all of these things early on.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
catching up to now, you just look back and realize like this was all contingent on me just believing in myself and just learning a craft, not knowing exactly where it's going to take,
Yeah.
but understanding like, yo, it's going to do something for me down the line.
Exactly. My whole thing is that I want to try to provide as much value as I can to other designers and other brands, and help build on their story,
Right.
on what they're doing. I think that as much value that you can add to others is you're only also adding value to yourself. So being in service of others is only benefiting yourself too.
Wow. That's beautifully said. So I know you mentioned to me that it gets a little challenging when you take on new clients as a fashion consultant when you're designing and doing pattern making. How do you navigate through working with somebody who doesn't really know what they want?
It's always so difficult, honestly. I would say that's probably the most challenging part of the process. And I've tried to limit the amount of new startup brands that are so new in fashion that I work with, because it's really unreliable, and I feel like I have to do more hand holding than I'd really potentially like to, because I do work with a number of clients that if I'm spending too much time on one client, then it's taking away from potentially other work that I need to deliver on.
Mm.
So for that reason, it's very difficult for me to work with extremely new brands that don't have any knowledge in the industry, unfortunately.
Right.
But I do hope to get to a point where I can scale things a bit and start to help others that are just starting out, just as I needed that help too.
I love that.
So I hope that answers your question.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is too, bro, you're gonna get to a point where you have like people working with you and for you. You're gonna start hiring a team and things are
Right.
only gonna grow. You're not gonna have to do all the work by yourself.
Yeah.
So, that's gonna come in due time. But at least you're getting the chance to figure out like how to navigate and help somebody navigate through something.
Right.
Because when that obstacle shows up for yourself and your brand in the future, it's not gonna be nothing to figure that out.
Exactly.
I love that you touched on that. We both get a lot of people DMing us all the time on the gram about how to step into the fashion industry. So what advice would you have for somebody who was trying to, step into the fashion industry, learning how to make clothes, and then understanding like how can I fit in this industry that seems so saturated from the outside looking in?
Yeah, I would say start now. Don't wait. Do what you can with what you have. If you don't have resources to pay someone, or you don't have a lot of money, okay, great. Buy a pattern making book, or start taking apart clothes, start sewing your own samples, and
pre-made patterns.
Exactly, pre-made patterns, exactly, on Etsy, or or from a book or something. And then from there, just keep growing your skill set and just create things that you like. Don't really focus so much on, is this going to be commercial, is this sellable? Just create what you like and just find your passion through it and do what you love. And then from there, you'll find your lane and your voice.
I like that.
Definitely. What would you say is the best thing for someone to do starting out and just getting into fashion?
The best way to expand as a designer today, honestly, is just being okay with making mistakes. Like social media teaches us, like it shows us perfection so much. We always see the end result on Instagram. So we see our favorite designers, right?
Yeah.
And then people see the end of a fashion show and they're like, yo, I'm gonna do it just like that.
Right.
Not even knowing what goes into it in between, bro. Like sometimes there's designers that I know and like that I've worked with or helped, where they literally have like 4 to 5 samples of the same design before they even say, okay, this is the right one.
Easily.
And most people are not willing to say, yo, I'm gonna do this 4 or 5 times because I need to get it right.
Yeah.
It's not about rushing. It's not about just like putting it out so people can see you. It's about what happens behind closed doors, and like the amount of things that you're learning but also the amount of energy that you're pouring into the craft. So
Yeah.
I think it's really just contingent on asking the right questions. I started looking up, if I don't know how to do a tutorial, I'll look up how to sew a zipper fly or how to sew a back pocket or how to sew a welt pocket, pretty much on TikTok. That's like TikTok is the new Google now.
Yeah, no, it
Um,
really is. To touch on what you said too, making sometimes, two, three, four, five samples of a garment before it comes out perfect is actually the real reality of the process,
right.
Very rarely do I ever make something that comes out perfect on the first try.
Mm,
It's usually, make the first mock up, do a fitting, pattern corrections, and then usually on the second try it comes out exactly how we want, or sometimes even the third try. It just really depends on complexity and how difficult something is. But I think through making those mistakes and going through the process is where you learn. And then let's say if you have an issue with an armhole and you fix it on one of your garments, and then on the next garment that you do, you know what not to do to have that same problem with the armhole or with the crotch on a pant, or so on and so forth. Like, it's a constant learning curve, and I feel like no matter how much you do it, there's still something new to learn.
right.
I feel like I'm always learning every single day. Every garment is a new learning process.
I agree. I definitely agree on that. And it's cool. It's interesting that you touched on that because I feel like sometimes in fashion school, what I don't like about it is that like they sell us this fairy tale of what it means to be successful as a designer in the industry, and it's a lot of smoke and mirrors too.
Oh,
Because
for
there's a
sure.
lot of brands out here who's they're thriving on social media, but they're not really making that much bread, and vice versa.
Oh yeah.
I know brands who have less than like 5,000 followers on Instagram, and they making like 100K a year from sales.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not always about like it's not it's not school. It's not always about um, one thing. It's just about your thing.
Right.
Some designers I know they just love the art of it. Like
Yeah.
even myself, I'm stepping into a space where I'm not even really so big on like the consumerism aspect. I love avant-garde fashion. I love creating garments that make me feel more confident, that challenge me. You
Me
know what I'm
too.
saying?
Me too.
And then of course there's garments that are sellable. But pretty much just focusing on what your lane is and not being sold this like fairy tale of like things are always going to be perfect, and once I make it in fashion this is exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
I was working for somebody at a point where she told me a story of how she got her clothes in like Bergdorf Goodman back in the day, and she got her stuff on the rack, but she had to get it pulled off after a while because she couldn't sustain the production cost of it.
Right.
And on the outside looking in, it's like, yes, I got my stuff on the rack now.
Yeah.
But essentially, she didn't have the bread to fund it moving forward, so she had to pull it off.
Right.
And she said, honestly, the biggest mistake was for her at the time was to not make enough money to sustain that.
Yeah.
Because then she had to go and depend on somebody to fund that money to her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of brands out here who's getting funding from people. So we just always we gotta just analyze the fact that everybody has their own story and that we're not gonna have the same exact come up as everybody else.
Exactly.
But pretty much just understanding like I have a vision of something and I'm gonna do the best that I can to bring this to life with everything that I have.
Yeah. There's not one way to success.
Right.
I've seen it happen many times over where designers will be on top of the world, and then next thing you know, stores are canceling orders, or they can't fulfill production, or they can't meet the deadline, and then it's a cancel ship date, or so on and so forth. And then they go from having this huge brand or what looks to be huge to now starting out again. So I would also say that going slow and working within your means is extremely important.
Working within your means.
Yeah.
And you mean financially or just like your mental capacity?
Mental capacity, everything. Just don't rush it. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.